Why leadership and firm culture matter more than ever in the legal industry. Law firms are built on knowledge, judgment, deadlines, and trust. Yet the firms that perform well over time depend on something deeper than technical skill. They depend on leadership and culture. In a legal market shaped by rising client expectations, remote communication, heavier caseloads, and competition for talent, culture has become a business issue. It affects how quickly teams respond, how clearly lawyers communicate, how staff members take ownership, and how clients experience the firm from the first call to the final update. Chris Jackman, owner and managing attorney of the Jackman law firm, represents one example of a legal leader who has placed internal standards at the center of firm growth. The firm began with a single office in Seattle, Washington, and has expanded across Washington, Colorado, and Texas. Its growth reflects a broader trend in the legal industry, where firms are paying closer attention to how leadership, accountability, and communication shape performance. The culture question facing modern law firms. For many years, law firm culture was treated as an internal matter. It was discussed in terms of morale, retention, or office personality. Today, culture is tied to operations. A firm with weak internal communication can miss important details. A firm that does not define ownership can leave clients wondering who is responsible for the next step. In contrast, a strong culture gives people a shared way to work. It helps employees understand what is expected, how decisions are made, and how client communication should be handled. Legal work often involves stress, time pressure, and significant decisions. That is why culture must be visible in ordinary moments. It shows up in intake calls, team meetings, status updates, calendar reviews, and the way staff members speak to clients who are worried or confused. Small daily habits often become the clearest evidence of whether leadership has set a real standard. They are not only evaluating legal knowledge, they are also evaluating responsiveness, clarity, and professionalism. Leadership sets the standard. Culture starts with leadership because employees take their cues from what leaders reward, repeat, and correct. Written values may help, but daily behavior carries more weight. A leader who avoids hard conversations can create uncertainty. A leader who models accountability can help teams address problems before they grow. Chris Jackman built the Jackman law firm around defined values that include customer focus, ownership of work, and a culture that respects and rewards excellence. Those principles point to a leadership style that treats culture as part of daily operations. This approach becomes more important as firms expand. A small office may rely on direct supervision and informal communication. A growing firm needs systems, standards, and leaders who can carry the same expectations across departments and locations. Communication as a measure of culture. In many client complaints about law firms, the issue is not always the legal work itself. It is silence, delay, confusion, or unclear expectations. Strong communication requires more than quick replies. It requires a shared internal process. Staff members need to know who responds, when to respond, what information can be provided, and when an attorney must step in. The Jackman law firm has emphasized a policy of communicating with clients within 24 hours when they ask about status. That kind of standard is significant because it turns client care into a measurable expectation. For growing firms, this type of structure helps reduce gaps. It also protects the client experience as teams grow. Accountability builds consistency. Accountability is often misunderstood in professional settings. It is not simply about correcting mistakes. In a healthy firm, accountability means each person understands their role, owns their work, and follows through without waiting to be chased. Legal work depends on many people. Intake staff may collect the first details. Paralegals may manage documents and deadlines. Attorneys may guide strategy and communication. Administrative staff may handle scheduling and records. When one person misses a handoff, the client may feel the impact. When each person owns their part, the firm becomes more reliable. This is why many legal leaders are moving away from cultures built only around individual performance. They are focusing more on team standards. Strong firms make clear that excellence is not limited to legal writing or negotiation. It also includes how calls are returned, how team members communicate with one another, collaboration across growing teams. As firms expand across multiple offices or states, collaboration becomes more complex. Distance can create different habits. New hires may bring methods from prior workplaces. Without steady leadership, a growing firm can become a collection of individuals rather than a coordinated team. That can create inconsistent service and internal friction. A strong culture helps prevent that. It gives people a common language for how the firm operates. It also shows employees that growth requires clearer standards. Jackman has grown the Jackman law firm from one office to a multi-state practice with several lawyers and staff members. That type of expansion requires more than demand for services. It requires hiring, training, communication, delegation, and repeated reinforcement of expectations. For legal leaders, the lesson is clear. Culture cannot remain informal when a firm grows. It must be taught, measured, and practiced. Client trust starts inside the firm. Client trust is often discussed as something built through legal advice and results. Trust also begins inside the firm. A client can sense when a team is organized. They notice when staff members communicate clearly. They notice when one person knows what another person has already discussed. They notice when information is not shared internally. Internal culture shapes these moments. A firm that values ownership is more likely to follow up. A firm that values responsiveness is more likely to reduce uncertainty. A firm that values excellence is more likely to review details before they become problems. This is especially important in practice areas where clients are under pressure. They may not understand legal procedures, timelines, or documents. They may need consistent updates to feel grounded. A client-focused culture can make the experience more understandable. The new expectations for legal leaders. Modern legal leadership now requires more than legal ability. Managing attorneys are expected to build teams, train staff, manage systems, and make decisions that support long-term stability. This shift is partly driven by client expectations. They expect clear updates, organized processes, and professional service. It is also driven by employee expectations. Lawyers and staff members increasingly want workplaces where standards are clear, leadership is present, and performance is tied to purpose. Culture affects retention, hiring, and development. Jackman also leads the firm internship program and mentors at-risk youth through Big Brothers Big Sisters. Those roles reflect a broader leadership theme. Legal leaders influence people beyond their own desks. Training the next generation. A strong culture becomes more valuable when it is passed down. They also need to train them in judgment, communication, and professionalism. New lawyers learn from what they observe. If senior attorneys ignore calls, avoid responsibility, or treat staff poorly, those habits can spread. If leaders model preparation, respect, and ownership, those habits can become part of the next generation of the firm. Internship programs, mentoring, and structured feedback can help. They give younger professionals a clearer view of what legal practice requires. This is one reason culture should not be treated as a soft topic. It influences how future attorneys define competence. It also affects how clients will be served years later. Why culture will remain a competitive factor. The legal industry will continue to face pressure from technology, client choice, staffing challenges, and changing expectations. Firms that respond only with new tools may miss the larger issue. Tools can support efficiency, but culture determines whether people use them well. Systems can track deadlines, but accountability determines whether deadlines are respected. Marketing can bring in clients, but communication helps keep trust. The firms most likely to remain steady are those that align leadership, culture, and client service. They will define standards clearly. They will address problems early. They will treat communication as part of legal service rather than an afterthought. Chris Jackman and the Jackman Law Firm show how a growing legal practice can connect firm values with daily expectations. The broader lesson for the industry is that culture is not separate from performance. It is one of the main ways performance is created. A stronger standard for modern legal practice. Leadership and culture now sit at the center of what clients and employees expect from law firms. Technical skill remains essential, but it is no longer enough by itself. Modern firms need leaders who can create clarity, build accountable teams, and protect the client experience through consistent standards. They need workplaces where people know their roles, communicate with purpose, and take ownership of their work. For law firms that want to grow with discipline, culture is not an accessory. It is the structure that supports trust, performance, and long-term credibility.